So I'm Scott. I'm co-founder of Candidate ID, and this is Mike.
I'm Mike from Cielo.
So yeah, what we want to talk to you for the next half about is about intelligent talent demand generation. So demand generation is an overarching term for how you generate interest or attraction in a proposition or an organization, okay? So that's what demand gen means, demand generation. And you'll see that term starting to creep in to talent acquisition and recruitment because it's coming across from B2B marketing. So talent's obviously about people, and intelligent is about how you do it in a way that is most productive, highest performance, and delivers most ROI out of the resources, the spend, or the people that you have, okay? But the first thing I want to talk about, so this is not at careers, okay, and this is not at CXO board, okay? This is everything in between, okay? And what I'd like you to think about is I want you first just to think about yourselves, okay, personally. Think about what it was like the last time you moved job or the next time that you moved job, okay? Now, what sort of decision is that? Is that a kind of hard, sort of complex, longish, difficult type decision, or is it a kind of easy decision that you can make quite quickly? Is it like choosing a magazine, okay? So if you think it's hard or long or complex, put your hand up. So we've got a few people here who think it's easy, that it's just like choosing a magazine, okay? So maybe they're couriers, but for most of us, this is a complex, hard decision, okay? So we approach it in the same way that kind of, B2B buyers do. We don't approach it in the same way that consumers do, okay? Consumers choose a magazine like this, okay? 15 minutes, a few hours, etc. So when you're thinking about this decision, is it something that you might take a number of days, weeks, possibly months, to research, or would you do it in a few hours? Okay? You're going to take time. Typically, you're going to take 4 months for lower educational roles or 6 months for higher educational roles, and that's research that's come out of Boston Consulting Group, okay? Now, is all the information that you need to learn about an organization that you're interested in, okay? In terms of where it's going, what it's doing, what its quarterly earnings are, is it in a good industry, is it going in the right direction? Would it look good on my CV? Would it look good for my career? What might it be like to work there? What offers do they have? What are they actually live opportunities? What are the career progression? What do they say about themselves? Is all that information out there? Okay? Could you do all that research on your own? Yeah, of course you can. It's all there. It's all there in the internet. It's all there in social media. It's all there on different reference sites, okay? So you will do that on your own, and we do that on your own, and you do want to do it on your own, okay? Now, how many of us like getting interrupted by a cold call? Right, does that happen every day? I get about 3 or 4, and I've got somebody who says no, send them an email, okay? Nobody likes cold calls, and nobody likes unsolicited email, okay? So, imagine, if I wanted you to imagine a world where you could see where candidates were and what they were doing, okay? So that you could just, you could see what they were interested in and you could see what they were reading. So you could identify the ones that were really, really interested, in your organization. And you could identify the ones that were really interested in your organization and had started looking at, your job advert, the jobs you have available, the career progression, so you could see where they were. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and we're going to use a case study with Cielo and Dialogue. So it's right click, I think. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to talk about the changing candidate journey. We're going to talk about how you can hire the best of what's out there rather than the best of what comes to you, okay? Because the best of what comes to you is just the best of people that apply, and that's circa 10% of the market. So we're going to talk about how you can hire the best of the other 90%, okay? And we're going to talk about how you can use heavy lifting, how you can use technology to do the heavy lifting so that people don't have to do this, and you can free up the people, okay, to concentrate on what only people can do, which is getting on the phone and talking to people and building conversations. And you can focus the people on the most productive part of the process, okay? The fourth bit, there's a point up there, we're going to talk about how you can, the data that you have in your ATS or your CRM is a gold mine, okay? What you've got to learn to do is how to mine it, to find, the A's and the B people in there. And we're going to talk about how, if you can market jobs to people, okay? So if you can market companies to people rather than jobs, then you can sidestep this whole candidate experience nightmare of having to reply to 1,000 applications because you've got 1,000 applications to deal with, okay? So, over to you, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. So I think the first thing we wanted to have a look at is how the candidate journey has really changed over the last 5, 10 years. I think historically, as we can see at the top, there's 4 distinct stages that we see candidates going through. The first is an awareness. They need to be aware of an opportunity, a role, a company, an organisation. And historically, this was the main focus of recruitment marketing. I think we had quite a one-dimensional approach. We would have adverts. We might have quite a basic career site that was out there, but the candidates were quite limited in the information that they could glean themselves. And what we tended to find was that a far bigger proportion of their journey was handheld by a recruiter. So the recruiter would help educate them on the organisation. They would really take them through the considerations that that candidate had around making a move or potentially making a move before we got to that point that they were comfortable making a decision and progressing forwards. What we see nowadays is an evolving journey, a very different journey, a journey where recruitment marketing is playing an ever and ever more important role in bringing candidates to organisations, but more importantly, educating them around the organisations before perhaps that contact is initiated with a recruiter. We find that there are numerous online resources that candidates can access nowadays that will give them an outside-in view of the organisation. And what we're finding is there may be a more difficult conversion for recruiters when candidates have self-selected in or out of a process. So what we need to ensure is that that marketing, that collateral, that content is focused around giving candidates a genuine, a transparent, a real vision of the organisation. And when we get to this end point as a recruiter, to Scott's point earlier, we're really focusing in on making sure that we're talking to the right individuals around the right opportunities. We know today that employment is at a 7-year low. We know that we are in an ever more demanding talent market. We find that there is less and less talent available, and we find that there is more and more competition for that talent. In fact, in a recent study, we looked at the FTSE 100 organisations. 2/3 of them are recruiting for the same 21 roles. And it's becoming more and more challenging for us to identify ourselves in a crowded marketplace when it comes to candidates and the talent. We also know that the knock-on effect with that at a business level is it's taking us longer to hire those individuals at the moment. Candidates themselves have had a very different journey. They are, I guess, showing behaviours more closely linked to what you would previously have associated with business buying decisions and business buyers. We're finding that the journey that they're going on is far, far longer now. There's a lot more insight and there's a lot more research that they're undertaking on their own back before coming into a process. And really key, on average, there's now 16 touch points for a candidate, various ways that they can gain information or understand more about our organisations before getting to that point of making a decision to come into process. Of the relevant candidates, of the relevant talent that's out there, we know only 10% of that is active. So if we take 100 candidates that we believe are suitable for our roles, we know only 10 of those are active, but more interestingly, only 4% of those are actually ready to commit to a move. They're ready to commit to a new opportunity. They're ready to commit to go forwards. This is a much more suitable impression of a candidate journey nowadays. I think historically, as we touched on, it was very much a case of an individual sees a job, applies for a job, talks to somebody about that job and is immediately into a process. What we find nowadays is that there are various mediums that candidates can gain information around the organisation and ultimately on their own make a decision to come into process, make a decision to come out of process. And this is definitely not a linear journey. So we've got a few of the touch points that we could find, but you will find candidates will come forwards, they'll move backwards, they'll go up, they'll go down, and they'll build a really strong picture around the organisation that they are potentially going to be getting involved with going forwards.
Yeah, so you can break the... You can break what, I mean, if you just think about it yourself, okay, you know, when you're thinking of a role. So the first bit is around, you know, in this awareness stage, it's around this, you know, what's happening in the industry, okay? Is it growing? What's happening with this organisation? Is it going in the right direction? You know, and so if I worked at that company, would it look good on my CV? Would it look good on my career? Okay, so that's kind of like that first step. The second step is like, you know, in the education stuff is, you know, could I see myself working there? You know, do they look like a good bunch? Have they got, you know, great career progression? And what's the culture like? And where are the offices? And what's the team? Who's the hiring manager, etc. And at this point, you're probably thinking, God, yeah, these guys are interesting, but I bet there's a few like them as well. So then you might go and have a look at another couple of companies and you do the same thing too. So you're really looking about, could I work there and what are my options? And then this third thing here, when you're really kind of into consideration is, is, right, well, what are they specifically saying about why I should work there? What are the benefits? What is the career progression? What's the live opportunities, okay? And you get to this bit here, okay? And you do all of that before you get to what's called ZMOT, okay? Which is that zero moment of truth, or that first moment of commitment, which is like, yes, I'm going to engage, which is I'm either going to start a conversation and I have a human relationship now with a recruiter or somebody for the organization, or I'm going to fill out a form and apply, okay? So you can break this, another way to look at it is in the funnel, okay? And you can break it down into, what's the type of channels that's best for delivering this type of content. But the key thing is to be able to everybody else is going to work their way through here. What you need to be able to do is identify the people that are there. Because if you can do that, they're the people that you focus on, because they want to talk to you, and that's who you focus the humans on. So if you imagine this non-linear kind of flight of the bumblebee candidate journey, okay, if what you could do was see that, okay, but then because you can see it and because you can track it, then we can score it. Now, if we were to put a score against each of these activities, so this is all kind of light touch, early education, +1. Coming to videos, watch the videos, a bit more commitment, so maybe +5. Okay, read the CEO blog, that's kind of like, where's it going, +3. But as you come through here and you start to, visit the career site for visit 3 pages, +7. Sign up for the talent network, +10. Come back and visit the multiple visits to the career site, +10, plus an auto alert to a recruiter saying, look, this guy's come back a few times and now he's here again, okay? Now he's looked at the job details, boom. So you might start calling him here, okay? And you would definitely start looking to call him here, even before he applies, okay? So if you can track candidate behavior and then you can score it, you can surface the people that are here, okay, before anybody else can. And you can just forget about this, because they will just work their way through, okay? So what we were able to do with our technology is first of all track and score a candidate's entire digital footprint, their entire engagement with you, and then we can put a powerful scoring algorithm underneath it, and we're looking to surface people in the top right, okay? So a lot of people ask us, they say, well, is that not CRM? Okay, is that not CRM? And well, what CRM can do enables you to, it's a little bit smarter from a segmentation point of view, but it's still pretty clunky. It's not personalization at scale, but you can put people in different buckets, okay? But then, and you can kind of communicate with them. You can send them an email, and if they open it, then you know that it's opened it, so you can attach a bit of a workflow to that. And you can see that they clicked a link, but that's it, okay? You don't know if they've then gone and looked at your company LinkedIn page and they've read that. You don't know if they visited the career site. They don't know if you've read the careers progression. They don't know if you've watched employee video testimonials on YouTube. You don't see any of that stuff. So if you think of John and Jane as being, this is just 2 people, okay? In CRM, they're both going to be having done the same thing, 2 points. But when you put a proper, intelligent talent demand generation platform underneath it, we can see that Jane is up at 37. So you're going to call her first, okay? Now, if there's 1,000 John and Janes, you're going to call all the Janes, and there'll be about 4% of them. So you'll have 1,000 people, and you'll end up with about 50 to call, because they're all here, okay? So.
Cheers, Scott. So we wanted to just introduce a case study where we utilize this technology at a customer organization called Dialogue. Because the first question, has anyone heard of Dialogue? 2, fantastic, 3. Anybody got Apple products, Apple iPhones with them today? Cool, so you're all benefiting from Dialogue technology. Dialogue is a global semiconductor manufacturer. They manufacture microchips that work to make most consumer electronics do as they do today. Challenge that we've always had with Dialogue is the skill set that we look for is narrow, very, very narrow. It's very niche engineering skills in the software and hardware side. And having supported them over the last 7 years, the challenge that we've got is our ability to keep mining more talent is becoming more and more challenging. That said, over that course of 7 years, we've built up within our ATS an absolute goldmine of potential candidates that I think, if we were honest, we just hadn't been harvesting and haven't been using to the best possibility. So during this program, we worked with Scott and the guys at Candidate ID really to put a programmatic approach around how can we re-engage our ATS and how can we wake the dead, effectively. Dialogue has a very cyclical hiring cycle, so we tend to have spikes coming into Q3 and Q4, and then we drop off as we move forwards. Hiring numbers, to put this into context, because that 15 is not going to look that impressive compared to the 8 or so thousand drivers earlier. But we hire around about 2 to 250 people annually, so this is quite a significant chunk. The The program that we went through here was really identifying suitable talent within our ATS, partnering with Scott to pull together a communication strategy that we could work with, and then looking at which candidates would come into process. So of the 3,000 or so candidates that we were able to identify in our ATS, we started mapping that behaviour, to Scott's point earlier, and seeing actually which ones of those should we be having conversations with. Of the 3,000, we got down to just over 300 candidates that were really interesting by way of skill set. They were interested and open to a conversation. We started promoting the conversations with them. And from this particular program, we brought 40 into an interview process and hired 15. I think another call out from this program that we haven't probably touched on is dialogue is heavily based around locational strategies and strategic locational strategies. So while we've hired the 15 here, we've actually also identified a pool of talent that may allow us to open a brand new design centre in a new location. So the impact on this program is huge. The cost per hire, as you can see down the bottom, again, we're not quite down at that £4 mark, but £667 for us in that sector is an absolutely phenomenal return on talent that we already had. And I think the key benefit from this is it really enabled our recruiters to focus their efforts on continuing with their day job, but focusing in on those candidates that would be suitable. So how did we do this? We talked a lot about brand today, but our big differentiator here is Dialogue is an engineering business. It's run by engineers. We've got about a 60% workforce population of engineers. And generally speaking, the EVP message to market here was you will work with like-minded people. You will come in and work for engineers. We partnered with a guy called Alex Tavares, who's one of our engineering directors, and he was really on board at a senior stakeholder level to work with us to be the face of this campaign for us. And we were able to get out some message to these candidates. So the initial content and the initial message was definitely not job-related. We're not pushing a specific opportunity. We're not hard pushing a job. It was more an introduction to re-engage individuals that at some point in the past had had an engagement with Dialogue. And through that process, we started seeing the behaviour Scott mentioned earlier of individuals actually then on their own starting to come back to us and investigate a little bit further the organisation. We ran this communication programme over a period of around 6 weeks. We altered slightly the messaging. We started off with a very generic approach. As we moved forward, we moved more towards an approach that was based around the technology and the technology that those individuals could be working on. And I think this was really, really important to gradually just build that interest back up. As we saw earlier, Dialogue is absolutely not a household name. You know, you're not necessarily going to come out of university, come out of college and want to work there. This was one of the challenges that we had. And again, made sure that the content was going out. The beauty with this content is all of this was already available on the careers site or various places online. The benefit of the programme was, for whatever reason, those individuals hadn't historically been choosing to come back and look at this. But through the proactive approach, through the buy-in of Alex and his sponsorship, we were able to get some fantastic results coming through. And we worked with Scott and the guys at Candidate ID really to ensure that the content, the send out, was built candidate first, mobile, tablet, and desktop enabled, because we know from a candidate standpoint, the habits nowadays are you're probably not going to look at this on your work laptop. You're possibly not going to look at it on a computer at home. You probably are going to consume that content on the go, on a mobile device or a tablet.
Yeah, one really important point in this before I just move on is that everybody talks about things about responsive, okay? You see that little grey menu up there? The top menu, okay? Now, responsive means that it's been built for desktop, but when it can recognize what device it's on. So what it does is it shrinks like a web page onto something that is, looks well on your mobile thing. But what it does is it takes all the links and jumps them up there, okay? Now, responsive is no good for mobile because it has to be built mobile first, because mobile first means that the links that you actually want them to click are front and center, okay? So you build it mobile first, which is, we call it candidate first, because that's the first point of engagement. So we just want to kind of like, so this was like yesterday, okay? So, you know, as Mike said, this program ran across the end of last summer for 6 weeks. But you can see that yesterday, people are still coming back and engaging with the career site, you know, engaging with the corporate site, engaging with some of the content. Okay, so it's just, the pipeline is just whirring away. Okay, so we've got, you know, somebody from Germany up there, you know, on 5 points. We've got, you know, 3 weeks ago, 90 points here, okay? And so there is, what you're able to identify, and Mike, you said that they've been able to identify, they hired, but they also identified other people that were really engaged such that we might be able to put a centre of excellence there because we've got all these people in this area. Now, if they then need net new people, they can just go straight back into the talent pipeline here and go, okay, these guys have been significantly interested recently, okay? But what I want to show you is, I want to show you one candidate, okay, who I've had to grey his name out here. And he's on 82 points, okay? And so when you see somebody who's kind of spiked in points, what you want to do is you want to go, as a recruiter, you want to go, right, he looks interested. The first thing is, how interested in he? Is he meaningfully interested? Is he just interested in the company or is he interested in the jobs? But firstly, is he a good fit for us? Okay? So he currently works at Intel and he's a senior analog design engineer in the IP group. Okay, so yes, he's somebody that we would definitely want to hire. So now I'm looking for, you know, at what stage of interest has he done? So we can see that first what he did here was he opened the first email and he read about the technology, and then he came back and he read about, you know, their culture and the organization. And then he waited a week and a half later, he opened the second email and he came in to read about connectivity and wireless technology as well. And then he came and he looked at careers and looked at the principal analog design engineer role, okay? And then he went and looked at career benefits, okay? And then a week later, he came in again, he read their code of business conduct, which talks about their values and their principles and the type of business that they are and the people that they hire, okay? And then he went back and he looked at career professionals again, and then he looked at the job vacancies, you know, twice. So what you can see with Liang is that he's learned about the company, he's learned about the technology, and he started looking at the live opportunities. And he's done that over a kind of month and a half, 2 month period. So he's definitely interested and he definitely fits the bill. So, a little bit on GDPR. I mean, GDPR is a ticking time bomb, okay? So, forget about net new, sourcing net new people from the 25th of May onwards, okay? But think about the data that you have now, okay? Let's just say that you're an organization, you've got 1 million people in your ATS and or CRM. If you say, okay, how much did it cost us to acquire that data? Typically, it's somewhere between $5 and $10. So you've got a $5 to $10 million database sitting there, okay? Now, unless it's up to date and unless it's engaged, it's not GDPR compliant, okay? So you don't have legitimate business interest to go and engage it after the 25th of May. So you'll have to go and ask for consent. So we've had one client, and they're a law firm, and they're absolutely, GDPR is at the center of their business. They've got a big practice here and everything. And so they said, no, we're just going to be absolutely rock solid and we're going to go and ask everybody for consent, which they don't have to do now. And only 5% said yes. So they deleted 95% of the database because they had to, okay? Now, you don't have to do that yet, but if you don't get your database up to date and refreshed now, and if you don't get it engaged now, and if you can't prove that engagement, that they've done stuff, that stuff that I was showing you before, if you can't prove that, then you're going to lose it. And it's going to cost you millions and millions of pounds. And so one of the things that, you know, what we call this wake the dead is because the ATS is a gold mine, okay? There is gold in them hills. You've just got to be able to work out how to mine it, okay? So we got a whole ton of stuff. You know, go to our site or drop us an email or contact me on LinkedIn. This is like an 80-page playbook. It tells you everything that you need to know about GDPR, you know, going up to it now and then afterwards. But after the 25th of May, the stuff that you've got to be able to do is demonstrate that it's up to date and demonstrate that it's engagement, okay? And you don't want to be doing this stuff manually. You've got to use technology to manage all of your unsubscribed retention policies, data subject access requests, subject information updates, the legal booster processing and deletion of incorrect. You've got to use technology to do this. If you do it manually, you're going to get in trouble and you're going to get fined, okay? You need an audit trail. So just to close, I thought what we would do is kind of like, okay, intelligent talent demand generation. You're thinking, hey, look, this is kind of like a different way of thinking about how we might go about talent acquisition and recruitment. So I just wanted to give you kind of 7 steps to start with. So you're going to do the first one.
Yeah, definitely. So I think the key thing for us and the success we've found is generating content that works and genuine content. You know, there's no point painting this shiny picture if a candidate gets there and the environment is very, very different. So that's been really important. Workforce planning, I think, is at the heart of everything we should be doing within talent acquisition. And I think, unfortunately, all too commonly, it's not a strength or strong point of a number of organisations. So the content and the workforce planning is really going to underpin the ability to run a programme like this. And then the segmentation of talent and the roles and the types of roles you're going to be looking at moving forwards again is going to be really, really important to understand what is the demand requirements that your businesses will have moving forwards.
Yeah, so I think you need to be also thinking about not only how do you mine the ATS and how do you keep the ATS through the CRM data refreshed so that you can be continually engaging that and picking up kind of like the silver necklace, but you need to also be building this net new, okay, net new people that are a fantastic fit for you. Now, this takes you to to marketing jobs. The really big problem with marketing jobs, okay, and you can use some unbelievable technology to do programmatic advertising, and the guys at ClickIQ have got one of the best tech platforms in the world for doing that, okay. But the problem with, so if you're going to do it, use them. But the problem with marketing jobs to people is you're going to get applications, and if you're a known organisation, you're going to get lots of applications. I mean, I was just talking with Neil from Dixon's Carphone Warehouse, and he got 300 applications for a small role, okay, which he had to go through. How long, Neil, did it take you to go through 300? Days? Yeah, and then you've got to do a yes-no pile, okay? So you're going to go no, okay, to 280 of them, or 270 of them. Now, they've applied. That's a very personal decision, okay? So if you don't send a personal response, or just an automated, bland corporate response back out, that's shit candidate experience. It's going to cause you a lot of problems from a candidate experience point of view. Now, that all comes because you've marketed jobs. If you market the organisation and tell your organisation story, we're all smart. We can find our way to the career benefits, and we can find our way to the actual job opportunities. What you need is technology that enables you to see that the people are there so you can prioritise them. And that enables you to sidestep this whole candidate experience nightmare that marketing jobs to everybody is. So you only market jobs to the engaged, okay? Being able to, strong segmentation, that's about, selling onions to onions buyers. If you're selling onions to onions buyers, show them onions, talk to them about onions, don't show them vegetables. And that's about, software engineers, Alex Tavares. This is what we believe is happening in software engineering, semiconductors, right? Onions to onions. Focus on quality candidate sources and automate as much as you can. Use technology to do the heavy lifting. You don't have to do stuff manually now, and focus the people on only the things that people can do, and use technology to do the rest. And I totally understand that lots of you are sitting on legacy, horrible systems that don't talk to each other. But that will change in time. Okay. Anything else?
No, all good.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.